There you are. Turn on the sound. Here we go. 268. My God, Maya. Yeah.
I saw that. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Maya.
morning. Very nice to have you again here, Timothy. I know that you are on the other side of the Tokyo Bay in Katsuyama in your beautiful boat. And good morning to everybody who is watching Japanese Politics One-on-One, episode 258. We have been here for almost 5 years. We are getting close to the 5th anniversary. And once again, today we're going to talk about the latest events and developments in Japanese politics. And I'm sure that Timothy is going to tell us a lot about the LDP, Ms. Sanae Takaichi, the Prime Minister of Japan, and also all the parties that are coalescing or allied with her, or maybe not, of course, because there have been some interesting developments during the past 1 week with Komeito and the CDP, the Constitutional Democratic Party as well. But I'm not going to spoil this for you because I want
You
Timothy
already
to.
did.
Oh, okay.
Now I
So
don't have
then,
anything to talk about.
right. Okay, then I'll leave it to you to repair the damage.
Thank you. Good morning, Maya, and good morning, everybody else. Today is January 18th. We are 3 weeks into this new year, and Miss Takaichi is in her third month of being prime minister, and what a ride that has been. You know, I think something's in the water, Maya, not just in Japan, but globally. There is so much going on of such deep significance. I think that probably with the perspective of a couple of years maybe in the future, we'll look back on this, and it's kind of like when Japan was going through the bubble economy. You were here. Um, that things are different now. Things at a substantial level, things are different. We're feeling this now. Japan is going through a period now unmatched by anything else in previous history of post-war history. Japan. It's just remarkable, and it's not just here in Japan. It's happening all over. But for example, just this last week, the prime minister decided that she was going to open the diet on Friday. So in 6 days, 5 days, the diet will open up on a Friday, and then everybody goes to the weekend. But she's already decided tomorrow that she's going to call for a snap election. At least that's the expectation. She's going to open the House and then close it. And then we will go into a 12-day campaign period where all the members of the lower house, they won't resign. The diet will close. Everybody has to go for re-election. And as a consequence of that, the opposition parties, two of the opposition parties, have decided to bury the differences that separate them and to merge into a new political party. This happens from time to time, that a new party is born. Sanseito came up relatively recently. Ishin has been in the works for maybe 12, 15 years. So it does happen from time to time, but this is epical. The Constitutional Democratic Party and formerly the LDP's 26-year coalition partner have decided to merge. This is groundbreaking. This is earth-shattering that these parties have decided to come together. This tells you that there's a very significant political realignment going on right now. There are a lot of people in the prime minister's party that don't like what she's doing. They don't want to be cozying up to Ishin. They don't like the Osaka group. They want to keep Tokyo as the central power. And then there are people that are really egging her on. She's had, visible disputes with Mr. Aso Taro on where the direction of the party is going and why he is not included more in her decision making. But it's not just that. This last week, the prime minister hosted the president of South Korea, Mr. Lee. They spent 3 days together. She hosted him at her hometown in Nara, and they played drums together. They're starting to form a little bit more of a regular pattern or beat in getting together. there's just been a lot going on there. The yen was at 158, and it's continuing. That's, I think, the highest it's been, or the lowest it's been, in 18 months. So it is of some significance. There's a lot going on. The defense minister was a week in Washington, D.C. The finance minister was 5 days in Washington, D.C. Both of them have returned. They're back to business tomorrow. Excuse me. But there is so much going on diplomatically, militarily, economically. It is just a time of great change and potential turmoil. We are on top of it. We report to you on what's going on every week. We appreciate you signing up and listening and participating in the Q&A. If you like this sort of thing, please take a second now to hit like so that we know that you're there and you appreciate this. And I'll pass it over to you, Maya. We can get into the individual briefing points, and then roll into the Q&A. I'll probably talk for about 30 minutes before we do that.
Probably. Yes, okay, thank you, Timothy, for that. I'm looking forward to hearing the details. Before that, once again, please help us spread the word of these briefings. If you think that they're helpful and informative, please share them with friends, family, colleagues, your bosses, or your subordinates, because these are the only briefings that are done every week in English, of course. I'm sure that you can find some news here and there, but consistently following the story is basically much easier when you tune in on Sunday morning at 8:20. And of course, there is another thing that I would like to talk about. We are going to have that's movie night. This coming Tuesday, that is January 20th. And if you are in Tokyo and your schedule allows, please join us at in Hibiya Midtown. There is a Toho Cinemas there. And of course, we will be there also a little bit earlier at 6 o'clock at the Lubina. That is a Spanish restaurant, so that, we can have something light and talk a little bit and then go to watch Avatar. That is the latest one in the series of Avatar. Also, I wanted to say again that I would love you to also tune in on February 11th. That is a Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, when I'm going to welcome Mr. Glenn Fukushima, who is a visiting fellow at the Stanford University. He's going to be on the podcast then, and we're going to talk about the Japanese economy, about trends, also geopolitical trends there, and science and scientific development here in Japan. Please put that on your calendar. That is February 11th with Mr. Glenn Fukushima, visiting fellow at the Stanford University. Of course, once again, we are grateful to everybody who is with us today. And Greg, thank you very much for letting me know. Maybe next time you will be able to join us for the movie night. It's too bad, but everybody else, please feel free to come and let's enjoy a movie. So Timothy, I took a little bit longer this time. Thank you very much for your patience. I know this is okay, but from now, okay, it's your turn. Please, let's go into the
but let me piggyback on the movie invitation. So it's just a loose opportunity for us to get together. We have an audience. We've been doing this for 5 years together with you, and we don't have an opportunity. It's not a breakfast briefing. It's not a physical briefing. So Maya came up with this incredible idea. Let's just get together. Let's find an excuse to get together and pick a movie and pick a theater. This movie runs a little bit long, Avatar. I think it's the third in the series. So it ends at around, 11 o'clock, Maya?
Yes.
So that's why we've decided, let's sit down and have something to eat, maybe a couple of drinks before the movie starts, because once the movie finishes, it's a school day, so we have to go to work on Wednesday, and that's the plan. So just get together, and if you're in Tokyo, if you can come, once we're in the restaurant or gathered together, I guess we'll send somebody to purchase the tickets in a block. But if you just know what, you've already decided something, Maya?
No, I guess it will be me.
Oh,
Who will
okay.
buy tickets?
Yeah, we don't have any other slaves, right? It's either you or me that's going to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
but we might have a volunteer. You never know. But
Right.
anyway, we'll get the tickets while we're there. If you can't make the dinner portion and you just go to the theater, then just pick up a ticket, and I guess we won't be able to hang out much because it's a movie. But it's a trial, so I hope it resonates with people and we can all get together.
Politics.
Maya, this is 258. We are approaching the 5-year mark. It is incredible. Thank you very much. I can't tell you how wonderful it's been to be with you for 5 years doing this every Sunday. Reporting from the deck of from below decks on the good ship Grimm's. It's a very beautiful day. The sky is just blue and crystal clear. It's a nice, it's January. Who would have thought, Tokugawa picked the right city when he decided to make this his capital city, because the weather here is just really, it's very continental, even though it's on a small island. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister has decided she will call for an election tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday. The Diet, it goes into session on Friday. So it's a little bit out of kilter. If you've been watching this show, last week, I kind of surmised that the threat of having a snap election was a trial balloon to kind of scare, the opposition parties, to pull Ishin closer in and to make them a little bit more malleable, perhaps, or a little bit more polite with what they're doing. But it certainly did trigger something, because in the weeks since she floated this trial balloon, and in fact, if she was going to have a snap election, we would have thought, or one would have thought, that when the new year opens, they would have decided that the Diet would start earlier in the month so that they could have the election, 10 to 12-day campaign period, and then get back to business in January for the budget deliberation. So in the Constitution, the Diet is supposed to meet for a 150-day session that starts in January. And they must pass, the number one priority of the budget of the Diet is to pass the budget, and the deadline there is April 1st. April 1st doesn't tell you all of the story, because the lower house has to give the upper house a month to deliberate and then pass the Diet. That month ends on the last day of March. So in fact, the lower house needs to they need to pass the budget 1 month before the deadline and then pass it to the upper house. And then they can sit back and smoke cigarettes and wait for their deliberations to finish. There might be points of contention. It's not like they're putting their feet up on the desks, but the role of the lower house is concluded. And so the budget process for the lower house is very compressed. And now, with the Prime Minister calling for a snap election, she hasn't actually done it yet. She's she's scheduled to do it tomorrow. And I think everything is in motion right now. The printing presses for the political parties are running all night long, producing campaign posters, the billboards that go up on all of the city streets for promoting the different candidates. You remember the big, huge billboards that have numbered spaces on them. They are printing those out as furiously as possible. This was a surprise, not just to us, but to everybody else. Nobody expected it. If there was going to be a snap election, it should have been earlier. Something happened, things changed, the dynamics changed, and she decided just this last week, I'm going to call for a snap election. It's going to be maybe the election day is going to be the 8th or the 15th. Those are Sundays. So election day for national office is always on a Sunday. Most campaigns end on a Saturday, so that the election day falls on a Sunday. So I think it's going to be on the 8th of February, after a 12-day campaign period. So the Diet will open up on Friday, and then it will close down for a dissolution. There'll be a couple of days of preparation, maybe even a couple of days inside the Diet in Parliament, and then it will close down, and then the 12-day election campaign will start so that it ends on February 8th. This is going to create a lot of excitement and drive, and things are just going to be really crazy for the next couple of weeks. And it's also, not only is it somewhat tumultuous, but it is definitive for a couple of parties and for the prime minister as well. If and this is her gamble, the LDP will do well in in holding this election. They will end up with more seats. They will have a firmer alliance with Ishin. They don't have Komeito anymore, remember. And in fact, in moving with Ishin and the kind of signals that we're getting with her movement with the Democratic Party for the People, so they've got this triangular relationship that it looks like it's moving towards solidarity. But that won't be understood until after the election. So after the election, depending on how the LDP does, how Ishin does, how the Democratic Party for the People do, there could be a further realignment. Definitely, the Diet needs to elect the new prime minister. The prime minister needs to select a new cabinet. And this is all in the second week of February. A lot is going to happen, and it's going to be very instructive about where the country is going, how policies are going to be formed. I think the prime minister has just had it up to here with piecemeal trying to pass different pieces of legislation, getting different policies going forward that will pass muster, that will reach 51% in the lower house. They can pass it up to the upper house. That can also reach 50%, and then the proposal or the bill can become law. Only with the budget, I think most people know here, only with the budget, the lower house passes it to the upper house, and the upper house considers it and maybe passes it. But if it doesn't, it goes back to the lower house, and the decision of the lower house carries the day. So basically, when the lower house passes the bill to the upper house, and they put their feet up on the desk and smoke cigarettes, and they give it 1 month, if the upper house says, we don't like this, we want this changed, it still comes back to the lower house, and they can pass the budget. But this is really compressing the schedule. It's just really, I can't stress how important and how critical this new development is. And it's also triggered this combination of political parties, the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito. They've decided, well, let's get together. And I think it's a defensive tactic, but it's also an offensive tactic. Even combined, the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito can't overcome what the LDP has with Ishin. But they are also worried about becoming even weaker in an election. And once the election trial balloon was floated, they decided to get together to protect themselves and also to put up a more consistent front to the voters. So you'll remember that a couple of the promises that the LDP made to Ishin was, Ishin was saying to the prime minister, I want Osaka to become the secondary capital. And number two, I want to reduce the number of seats in the lower house by 10%. And in a kind of a disproportionate way, that would hurt Komeito. So Komeito is struggling to figure out how they're going to maintain, relevancy in a diminishing voter pool. So, they've been thinking about this, and the Constitutional Democratic Party is in a similar situation with the LDP and Ishin forming an alliance, maybe even the Democratic Party for the People. It does put a huge threat, particularly on Komeito, but also on the Constitutional Democratic Party. So this represents a formal attempt by traditional opposition parties to build electoral competitiveness against this LDP, Ishin, potentially Democratic Party for the People bloc, especially in urban and swing districts. So there are many districts where Komeito is strong and they can squeeze out the LDP. But without that alliance, and people have been voting for 26 years with LDP and Komeito, And breaking that habit is not an easy thing. I mean, psychology and habit and people being the way they are. So Komeito really has to pull a rabbit out of the house. Komeito's alignment with the Constitutional Democratic Party underscores lingering discomfort with the LDP's direction. It's more right wing, and the Komeito is distinctly, peace dominated and helping the underperforming and the people who are kind of scratching at the economic level. And it's just ended 26 years. So they really need to come up with something. And the new centrist force positions itself as a policy-focused alternative, potentially appealing to voters fatigued by the polarization. So we're all fatigued by that. The Prime Minister, Ishin, it's a fight every way. The LDP doesn't have control. It needs to kind of piecemeal and negotiate with everybody. So it's a real difficult environment. And I think the Prime Minister has taken the bull by the horns and said, we're going to solve this one. Even if we break our legs doing it, we need to do this because the government can't go on. And despite the talks of the dissolution on probably the dissolution, I don't know when the dissolution will be. The Diet will open on Friday. That's a given. What happens after that? There's only a brief period of time where you can have 12 days, and then it's February 8th. So you can count backwards for that. But the current arithmetic, the governing arithmetic, the LDP and its junior partner, the Innovation Party, Ishin, hold a slim majority in the upper house, but not in the, in the lower house, but not in the upper house. They need the Democratic Party for the People to join to bring in the numbers for the upper house. And then with that kind of triangular relationship, then they've got the lower house and they've got the upper house, and they can begin to push policies through. They can pass bills without wasting so much time, in back rooms, smoking and discussing and coming up with a resolution that doesn't satisfy either of them. So the opposition merger changes the dynamics by consolidating previously fragmented rivals into a more coherent and potentially electorally potent bloc. And it could attract other people who are kind of dancing back and forth. They don't like the LDP, but nobody else is really capable or represents their interests. But this new merger and the policies that they're going to start promoting, particularly during the campaign, it appeals to a wider band of voters. And so that's the dream here. There are still people and voices within the LDP who are urging, caution in going to the polls too early. And this compressed legislative calendar, it risks, creating a lot of dissension. And also passing the budget is not an easy move, and complicating it with some would say a selfish desire to grab power and putting the budget at risk could turn, a lot of voters away. There are other senior figures within the LDP that see this as a chance to secure a more stable governing margin, and let's see how that pans out. But we're going to be watching it very closely. Getting on to the economy and the yen, the yen briefly touched 158.9 to the dollar, and that's the weakest it's been in 18 months. And probably the news that the Prime Minister was going to call for a snap election did have its impact on that. There is a political risk premium that reflects these market expectations. A snap election could lead to more aggressive fiscal policies, which might be good. Japan may continue stimulus-driven spending, which is good for those who are lacking the funds. And global investors are pricing in relatively monetary policy and growth uncertainties. And that's where the yen fluctuates when the money can go to the United States dollar or to the Japanese yen. So for everyday consumers, the currency weakness translates into higher costs for imports. And as we all know, when imports into Japan are higher, typical voters suffer as a consequence of that, from energy to food and digital services to foreign travel. And very little foreign travel is going on right now. And you might have noticed it is off season for tourists, but tourism has also taken a bit of a hit too, Maya. You see, the regular crowds in Tokyo, but throughout the rest of Japan, I think the fact that it is off season, and also the Chinese are not coming in; they're being restricted from traveling to Japan. But you're beginning to see this impact throughout the country, and it's not just the high prices of food and imports and digital services, but it's also the money that's being generated as on general as general business is being conducted. So the inflation to daily life, and especially for households on fixed incomes, remains persistent even as the headlines concerning inflation continues. So the LDP is in a delicate situation. Inflation is continuing to grow. They're going to hold an election, and they hope that the voters vote for them even under those circumstances. So this dynamic with Ishin, with the Constitutional Democratic Party, and Komeito, moving forward, we're not going to be talking about that. We'll be talking about the party that had its roots with the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito, and the reason why they pursued these policies is because of their historical underpinning. But moving forward, we're not going to be talking about those two parties anymore. And I hope it's a good strategy for them. I mean, all of us have experienced the fragility of Japanese politics over the last, well, since Mr. Suga, actually. Suga, Kishida, Ishiba, and now Takaichi. And by the way, Mr. Suga just announced on Friday that he's not going to run as a candidate in the next coming election. Taro Aso has also said publicly he's not going to run to retain his seat, but that was before the snap election came out and before he was yelling at Ms. Takaichi, "What the hell are you doing, and why didn't you ask me first?" So we've got that to deal with too. In addition to all of this, there are things going on geopolitically that impact Japan. Japan is a member of what's going on in the region and is becoming more and more a kind of a central fulcrum. I think that's based on, the request of the United States. The United States wants Japan to shoulder more of the burden. It wants to begin producing more military armament and trading it and developing it for its alliance partners, as the United States presumably begins to back off and focus more on, continental America. You look at the other dynamics in the United States, and you're not quite sure if that's in fact the case. But in any event, it is relying more on Japan to carry its share of the burden. This last week, Mr. Koizumi, previously farm minister, minister of agriculture, he's now defense minister. He spent a whole week in the United States. He talked with Pete Hegseth, minister of war. He met with Vice President Vance inside the White House. So this is big. And it's not just ceremonial. I mean, many times a lot of what Japan does diplomatically is viewed as ceremonial. The Ron Yasu kind of thing, Mr. Abe with Trump, and also kind of playing up to the press. These meetings nowadays seem to be much more structural and much more finely orchestrated to be producing real movement. So a week in the United States for the defense minister, and similarly a week with the finance minister. She was also in the United States, not the two of them together, completely separate. But this is pretty significant. At the same time, Mr. Motegi was in the Philippines signing 2 military agreements for cross-sharing and for training purposes. So this affiliation of like-minded nations forming this kind of alliance bulwark against China, for China to consider moving kinetically on Taiwan, it just continues to grow and mushroom. And I think that is to dissuade China from making that move. And apparently there's a sunset time when China can actually move on it, and it's probably within the next 24 months. And after that, the timing for moving on that apparently dissipates. But you can see that there's a lot of energy and momentum going there to prevent that kind of decision from being made. The Japanese Minister of Defense went to the United States and reiterated what the Prime Minister said, that Japan is going to continue to shoulder more and more of the GDP portion to military armament for the defense policies, and to relieve the United States from supplying that all the time. He came back yesterday with several messages to the Prime Minister of moving forward in the 5-year plan for 2% of GDP being met in 4 years rather than 5 years, pleasing the United States. And that also means that Japan can build up this defense industry complex to build more and more armaments and to sell them to countries that are affiliated with the push to prevent China from moving more aggressively. The Prime Minister also, as I mentioned, hosted President Lee, and he, rather than coming to Tokyo to do a lot of diplomatic stuff, he went to her hometown. Apparently, they had 2 days of great meetings, and it's part of this. Mr. Lee is not so favorable as the previous president was to building a relationship with Japan, and he was criticized for that. Mr. Lee is a little bit more sanguine about dealing with Japan. He was just in China 2 weeks ago, so following that up with a trip to Japan is pretty significant. But it's important. It's important to the United States, and it's important to the region that Japan and South Korea have a good working relationship. So it's not shuttle diplomacy quite, but they've already decided that they're going to meet much more regularly, and to have him come to Japan and spend time in her hometown is kind of setting the tone that it's not a formality. This is something that it's a little bit more comfortable. It's going to be done on a more regular basis, and hopefully it's going to produce a better facilitation between the leaders and also between the two countries. So that's what's being looked for. So in the coming weeks, there's a lot to look forward to. Just this next week coming up, tomorrow there'll be an announcement by the Prime Minister. We predict it's going to be an announcement for having a snap election that will culminate in Election Day falling on February 18th. It could be a little bit different, but I think that is the rule. The Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito announced their merger on Friday, so there'll be more news coming out this next week about what that means and what their policies and their positions are going to be. Since the snap election will be announced prior to the opening of the Diet, you're going to be seeing a lot of Diet members spending much more time in their election districts and being a little bit more vocal about what they stand for, what the LDP stands for. The Prime Minister will be extremely busy stump speaking for candidates who are in a bit of political indecision, perhaps, because many people who hold their positions now received support and votes from Komeito, and they've done that for 26 years. So some of them haven't been Diet members for 26 years. So for however long they've been in the Diet, they have owed some allegiance to Komeito for supporting the votes that got them elected. And that is gone now. That is completely gone. And Ishin doesn't quite fill that gap. The Democratic Party for the People doesn't quite fill that gap. But not only that, but in most political races, the LDP was challenged by Ishin or by the Democratic Party for the People. In the Komeito LDP alliance, they kind of divided up and said, I'm not going to run a candidate in that district because that's important to you, and I'll just give you that one, but you give me these, and you tell your voters to vote for my candidate, and I'll tell my voters to vote for your candidate. So they had a bit of an arrangement going on now there. So moving forward, that is all. The slate has been wiped clean. So how that's going to go, how parties will begin to define district strategies and alliances needs to be set, and it needs to be set very quickly. And the budget negotiations will intersect with electoral politics and potentially complicating the timing and coalition leverage. So the Diet may convene on schedule on Friday, but the political system will be in election mode almost immediately, as soon as the prime minister announces tomorrow. So it's not a routine start for a legislative year. This is very rare that the Diet would open and then close for an election. But it is really a turning point. It's unavoidable. I think the prime minister, the LDP, the people in power have decided we can't continue in this way where we're just doing things piecemeal. We're not the LDP anymore. The faction system has disintegrated. We need to have a new alliance. We need to have a new way of dealing with policy. So it's really Japan is entering a political moment that could reshape governance for years. Believe me, this is really epical where we're going through what we're going through right now. The snap election emerges not out of crisis really, but from a political calculation and a structured uncertainty, and that's what brings this all to the fore. So we're really standing, and it's not just Japan. You can see it elsewhere in the world. People are teetering on making a critical decision to plot the forward steps of where we're going as an economy, as a political entity, as a government, as a political party. It's all across the board. So it's really important to keep on top of this, to keep watching it. We're going to follow it. We're going to report to you every week on Sunday. And we appreciate you tuning in, the questions that you provide for us. We don't always have the answers, but there are a lot of smart people, hundreds of Japan hands in the audience. So if we don't have the answer, somebody can chime in, and they usually do. So with that, Maya, I'd like to turn it over to you. We can get into the Q&A period, and we can talk about what's going on in Japanese politics that's really particularly important, or those issues that I haven't been able to address succinctly enough. Back to you, Maya.
Thank you, Timothy, and to everybody who is with us, thank you very much for tuning in. Remember that you can watch these briefings even if you cannot make it at 8:20 in the morning, because the briefings remain, the replays are available on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well, so the links are the same. No worries there. Also, please help us spread the word. We have been doing these briefings for almost 5 years, entirely free of charge for the audiences. We are not going to charge you anything, even for this one or the next one.
Except you have to hit like.
Except you have to hit like and tell your acquaintances and friends and family and colleagues if you think that they will benefit from the information here. So, thank you very much, Timothy. Moving on to the questions and answers. Today, I'll start with the very first questions that came this morning. Again, we all know that's from Byron. And yes, well, there are 3 questions today. Let me get to the first one. Okay. In parliamentary democracies, when the ruling party loses majority but is still close to 50%, it cobbles together alliances to form a coalition government. Indians' PM, Prime Minister Modi, for instance, lacks 30 plus seats in the lower house. The remedy is never to call a once-a-year general election. Is Japan's democracy inherently weak that they call these expensive elections seemingly for no reason when the LDP is close to or even has a majority with individuals like Mr. Seko Hiroshige, who is technically an expelled LDP member, but always votes with the LDP?
I didn't understand the inclusion of Mr. Seko. What's that have to do with it? The fact that he's out of the LDP, but
it's just an example. It is an example that even people like Mr. Seko vote for the LDP.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not the governing party, but there are plenty of independents like Mr. Seko who will vote for the LDP if it benefits them or if it aligns with their policies or their positions. But also, even if it doesn't, there are benefits to voting with the governing party. You can gain an advantage. You can, that's how politics works. So having it's not quite robust. The independent movement among Japanese politicians is not very robust. It's Japan, so people want to belong, and there are groups, and people have group meetings, and there are rules for joining the group, and they, exercise enforcement of the group. So we've got plenty of groups, and those are called political parties, or sometimes factions, or loose associations. But if you don't have 50%, that yes, you have to bargain. And I think that what the LDP has realized is it takes too much time, it's too much energy. The result is not satisfying enough. Let's quit this. Let's get back to the LDP gets to call the shots. And in order to do that, they also have to give up something, because if they're going to bring in Ishin has some demands. We know what those demands are. The Democratic Party for the People also has some issues. We'll vote with you. We'll make sure that it goes smoothly on several issues, but we have issues too. So you have to perform on those. So it's like they say about making sausage. Sausage is wonderful to eat, but you really don't want to watch how it's made. It's the same thing with politics. Politics can be very nasty and icky, and it's about cobbling together relationships where the natural force is not to have a relationship, but expediency and trying to get the job done and maintaining your position. Can you imagine in Japan, being a member of parliament? It's like a career. It's not like something you dabble with. Maybe you made some money, you wrote a book, and then you get into politics, and then you get out. People typically aspire to politics and stay in for the rest of their life. So in the upcoming election, there are going to be plenty of people who lose their seats. And can you imagine what they do? They don't sell insurance. They don't, maybe they teach at a university, but falling from grace like that is a huge move. So people will do a lot to keep that position. It's going to be a very interesting political phase that we're going through over the next month and a half or so.
Right. Okay. Thank you for this. And then the next question is, popularity of Ms. Takaichi may not transfer to LDP, that remains broadly unpopular. In the light of the CDP Komeito merger, single-member districts will be extremely tough for LDP to win.
Yeah.
Komeito was supplying bloc votes to the LDP. What are your thoughts on this, Timothy?
This is also Byron?
Yes.
Okay. The LDP, yes, contrary to that assertion, though, Byron, the LDP poll, they published a poll on Thursday of this last week where the LDP came out at 60% approval. The Prime Minister is just a little bit below 70%. So she's been up, she's been down, but that's very strong. And I think that strength encouraged the Prime Minister to go ahead and move forward with a snap election. This popularity is fleeting. Japanese voters are very fickle. They'll turn on a dime, and when they go into the voting box, sometimes they haven't made a decision until they get there, and they're supposed to write down the candidate's name. So it's a very delicate thing, and I think the LDP it's got its own problems with the people that are against what the Prime Minister is trying to do, even though she's the Prime Minister and the leader of the LDP. But I think she's in a very strong position. I think she'll be Prime Minister for quite a while if she survives this gambit to hold a snap election and for the LDP to come out on top in whatever configuration. Maybe she has to give a cabinet seat to Ishin, or maybe to Mr. Tamaki. I don't think he's going to insist on being Prime Minister again, but you never know. I mean, it's all up for grabs.
You never know, especially with Mr. Tamaki. Yeah, and of course, it's politics. All right, and one more question from Byron. Many media reports indicate that Ms. Takaichi took the decision to dissolve the House without any consultation, apart from Mr. Imai Takaya, a senior bureaucrat since the Shinzo Abe era, who has himself never run for any election. If the LDP gets less seats than they currently have in the snap election, won't the talk start to replace her?
Definitely.
Is Japan destined for endless elections and constant instability?
Well, I think that's the fear that everybody's running away from, and I think that's the gambit that the prime minister has taken. If she comes through with this, then yes, we move into a new realm of Japanese politics. It won't be like it was before. It won't be like Shinzo Abe. It won't be like Tanaka Kakue. It won't be the LDP and the factions. It'll be very different. And we have to learn Japanese politics all over again because the dynamics will change. The dynamics will change very significantly. So, yes, I think the LDP will stay strong. Yes, the LDP, some people in the LDP are mad that she's doing things without consulting with everybody. You can't, that's one of the difficulties with people who live in Japan and foreigners who are here. Everything just takes so much time. You have to discuss until everybody's exhausted, and then finally you make a decision. In politics, it's even worse. And everybody wants to have their voice heard. And I think you can see with this prime minister, she's taking notes from Donald Trump. Be assertive, be aggressive, say what you're going to do, and then do it. And be maybe a little bit unpredictable. And I think these are the kinds of things that she's picking up to be a significant leader. And it's playing out in real time now. The LDP is different than what it was when she first took office, and it's going to continue to be different. So we really don't know what we're going to end up with, and that's what the snap election is all about. So during this campaign period, you'll see the prime minister, you'll see members of the current cabinet. Well, they're not going to be in the cabinet when they're on the campaign. Actually, everybody's resigned. During the 12-day period, the Diet is in recess because there are no members of the lower house. The upper house is still in session. But you're going to hear a lot about what the vision is for the LDP or what the vision is for this coalition with Ishin. The governor of Osaka resigned on Friday. You heard that, Maya?
Yes.
So he is the leader of Ishin, and he's also the governor of Osaka. He resigned on Friday as a consequence of this, the snap election, and probably as a consequence of LDP and Ishin coming together. When I first heard this, I thought maybe he was resigning as governor in order to run for the lower house. And I don't think a lower house seat compares to a governor's seat. But it did come out that he's not running for lower house. He's not aspiring to become prime minister through that route. He's going to stay as governor of Osaka. He's opening it up, and this alliance that's coming through also impacts what's going on with Osaka. The technicalities of him resigning and the mayor of Osaka resigning really blend more with making Osaka the second capital, and it triggers a referendum to make that. It's already been done twice. The motion failed 2 times. So usually when it fails the second time, the issue is dead. They're still determined to make Osaka the second capital. They've negotiated with the LDP to make that happen. And in order to achieve that, then they have to go through a referendum in Osaka where the people of Osaka decide that it is okay to make Osaka the same kind of political structure as Tokyo To.
Right. Yes. And then, Greg, thank you very much for your question. Yes, it's very true. Byron's second question was very much related to your question here as well. So, all right, let me move on. So we've got Hiroaki, who is saying, Prime Minister Takaichi is super intelligent so that she can launch an election campaign like the LDP Win Big. You can get the value-added tax zero expansion, and which it can last a longer period of a time. That's Hiroaki Nakanishi. From Hiroaki's comments here, it looks like Hiroaki is running for a seat. I don't know whether that is true or not. Yes. So, but if you are Hiroaki, and if it is true indeed, so to everybody who is in Chiba, that is Chiba Prefecture, the 5th district, please remember that Hiroaki is there. All right. And yes, we've got also Rossi. Rossi, thank you very much for the question. His question is about Yuka, please stay there and I'll get to your question as well. So first, Rossi's question: voters have their hands forced with snap elections. That is strategic to make it easier to pass legislation, but can it be said that sudden elections actually serve the public interests broadly? And how does one actually evaluate the effects of snap elections on public interest, for better or for worse?
Yeah,
Timothy.
I think that that's somewhat reflective of what Byron was also saying. It seems to be a selfish move. We were poised to go into this election, into this new diet, which starts on the 23rd, the emperor coming over on Friday to open the diet. It's going to be a regular diet session. We thought that was going to be the deal. I think the prime minister said, I don't want to return to the fractured politics that we had before. Let's do something different, vastly different. If you want a vastly different result, you have to do something vastly different than what you have been doing. And she is doing that. So I think what she wants is not to have piecemeal policy proposals that are chewed up and spit out and discussed ad nauseum. She wants the political machinery to move forward. She could be, in fact, one of the most significant Japanese prime ministers in Japanese post-war history. She's building those blocks to achieve that. But it's very delicate. You know, a slip could mean, you know, failure, and then she's going to be kicked out of office because the LDP ends up in a worse position. That's what happened with Mr. Ishiba. And in fact, the whole reason why we're in this situation is because of Mr. Ishiba and the decisions that he made. He became prime minister. He closed the house almost immediately. You'll remember that?
Yeah.
And, it was decided that's not a very good idea. And it turned out not to be a good idea. The LDP didn't win significantly. They lost momentum there. This was an issue that he triggered. The prime minister can trigger a snap election. He triggered that. 7 months later, it was the upper house election on a regular schedule. Every 3 years, half of the upper house goes up for election. The LDP did worse that time too. So
Right.
this is a dream and a drive and a vision to change that, to break that mold. Miss Takaichi is not a prime minister like Mr. Ishiba by any stretch. And I think she's trying to build it so that the LDP comes back on track. And those LDP members who are unhappy with her performance, you know, maybe they'll learn a lesson. Maybe they'll come back, or maybe they'll just, you know, join the LDP, the independent ranks like Mr. Seko. Mr. Seko
Right.
joined the independent ranks because he was essentially kicked out of the LDP, but that's
Yeah.
a different issue.
But well, in defense of Mr. Ishiba, of course, he was not a charismatic prime minister. He was not really very, let's say, good at policy making either. But we also have to say that before he became prime minister, he said that he was not going to call a snap election, right? So he was advised by people there in Nagatacho to change his let's say, his opinion and his stance. And it was not entirely on him, right? That snap election actually was so bad for the
Yeah.
LDP, and we are in the situation we are at the moment. But there are so many things like
Sorry.
yes,
We could forgive him if it was just that, but it was that and this and that, and you know, geopolitically, he just didn't do very well. Um,
right,
yeah, and the upper house election, that was the nail in the coffin. And like you said, he wasn't very charismatic. I don't think you can put charismatic in the same chapter as Mr. Ishiba. He wasn't charismatic at all. He tried to be, but it just didn't carry the day. And in contrast to that, you have Miss Takaichi. So yeah, her popularity is really, and it's just because maybe the swing. You come from a, you know, somebody like Mr. Ishiba, and then you come up with you know, a female, and she's fresh and she's smart and she's, you know, she's attractive on TV, and I think she's very appealing. She has an appealing personality and an appealing profile. You know, just how she got into politics, what she did. She was the protege of Shinzo Abe. So, yeah, a lot going on for her.
Well, indeed, and well, all the policies she's talking about, obviously, they are a song to the hearts of the Japanese people,
That's
right?
right.
So we'll see what happens. And yeah, it looks like the LDP has regained some of its popularity recently. So hopefully Japan will have a strong prime minister even after the election.
Well,
Yes,
like I
Timo.
said, the Japanese voter is very fickle. So they can be fickle in the positive side if you manage it well. There are no scandals. You're on TV. You explain yourself well. Certain dynamics internationally go in your favor. The prime minister is scheduled to meet with Donald Trump. She's going to go to the United States sometime in the spring before Donald Trump travels to China to meet in China with the president there. So there's a couple of good dynamics in her favor, but it's a very dangerous world too. What's going on in Venezuela? What's going on in Taiwan, in North Korea, in Iran? There's a lot of turmoil that could go and force the prime minister's hand or force Japan to do something that it normally wouldn't do. And we're talking about military movements. But Japan needs to be in a better position. I think most people appreciate and understand that, and I think the Japanese people are beginning to appreciate that the self-defense forces needs to take on more of a role in defending Japan.
Right. Okay. And a question from Yuka. To what extent does the CDP and Komeito's decision to form the centrist reform alliance reflect their strategic concerns about competing in the upcoming snap election?
Oh, I think that is precisely the reason why they did that. Komeito is worried. So one of the promises that the LDP made to Ishin was to reduce the number of seats in the Diet by 10%. And that is critically going to hurt Komeito more than anybody else. It'll hurt everybody. Everybody's going to suffer a little bit. There's 25 seats in the district seats and 20 seats in the proportional representation seats. Komeito has a lot of people in the proportional representation seats, and they are the arch enemy of Ishin. So it does hurt Ishin and Komeito, and joining forces with the Constitutional Democratic Party, their votes need to go somewhere. When they didn't have a candidate in a particular district, they would tell their voters, please vote for the LDP candidate because we're getting their love and affection elsewhere in the country. And as a member of Komeito, please do that for us. That aspiration, it needs to have some place to go. It's not going to the LDP, and people they might continue to vote for Komeito, but if there's no candidate in the district, they're still going to get beat. So joining forces with the Constitutional Democratic Party, it's not a move of desperation, but it's a move of stability and relevance. And for the Constitutional Democratic Party, they've been inching down little by little. The LDP is very clever in forming with Ishin and with the Democratic Party for the People. Who would have thought that 10 months ago? So they're worried that as an opposition party, their pals Ishin and the Democratic Party for the People, they've fled. They've gone to the evil side, and now we have to cobble together an opposition party that's going to attract Japanese voters, and we need to protect them and promote the interests that are important to them that are being ignored by the LDP. So that's where the battle lines are.
Right. And well, we've got a comment from Rossi here saying, interesting observation from Timothy that Prime Minister Takaichi is taking notes from the current US president.
Yeah.
Aggression and unpredictability are certainly his behavior norms rather than norms of Japanese politicians in general, but I still wonder if it's completely sound to attribute her behavior to his.
Well, I think leaders across the globe are doing the same thing. She hosted, by the way, the Italian prime minister as well this last week. She had a busy diplomatic week in light of everything else that was going on. And that just, she hosted two heads of state at the same time that she decided that she's going to have a snap election. She's going to announce the date of it tomorrow. There's a tremendous amount of energy and decision making that goes into that kind of. This is epical. So, boy, being prime minister, that's there's a lot to it, and so you have to take your hat off to somebody that's able to cobble it together to move forward with an air of confidence and to project that to the country. You watch the yen, so the yen is kind of like a thermometer, and she did announce the snap election. The yen took a bit of a hit as a consequence of that, but you'll see a little bit of volatility as the LDP begins to form what it actually means to be in alliance with Ishin and with the Democratic Party of the People. Likely, no decisions will be made about that coalition or about political parties having cabinet seats until after the election. So the election will happen, and depending on how well you did, it might mean that we will be an alliance, you will get a cabinet seat, that sort of thing. So there's a lot to be decided in the next 3 weeks.
Right. We have a question from last week, actually, which was shared with us on Tuesday, I believe, on the previous briefing, and then I'm going to write it. It is from to read it to you. It is from Nicholas Hughes. The question is, does Timothy think anyone in Japan is looking at the US statements and plans about occupying Greenland, and how the same arguments and reason could be made about the US occupying Okinawa? The similarities are striking. Both countries are in strategic locations. Both countries host US military bases covered by extraterritorial aka unequal treaties agreements. Both countries have at one time been occupied by the United States. In fact, if the rumors are true about the secret clauses to the treaty that returned Okinawa to Japan, the US may have more of a legal right to claim and take over Okinawa than Greenland.
I don't think so. Taking over Okinawa would be so much more of a headache. Okinawa, it is true that there's a bit of a difference between the people of Okinawa and the people in the formal islands of Japan. The Okinawans feel a little bit diminished as a result. They feel they're the poorest of all the prefectures. The birth rate is the highest there. Their lifespan is the longest, but it is a different place. And although the United States occupies a significant portion for military bases and that sort of thing, I don't think, it was reverted back to Japan under Richard Nixon. And I don't think that will ever be undone. But you are right to point out that there are secret agreements. There are several secret agreements that we know of or we suspect that allow the United States to do certain things on the territory that they occupy within Okinawa. It wasn't a complete reversion, in other words. Many people think it was a complete reversion. They gave it back to Japan. They didn't retain anything, and then they got agreements to use certain space for certain purposes. But I think some of it was just never relinquished. And what they can do with that is the subject of the secret agreements that there's been discussions and leaks about that, but it's very different from Greenland. I think Greenland, it is true that the strategic geopolitical positioning is significant and somewhat similar, but I don't see that there's the United States is not going to move on Okinawa. It is forever Japan's country. Greenland is not forever Denmark's country. It's not like a part of the state. It's a different political entity. So I think that's one of the reasons why the United States, or maybe Donald Trump, sees an opportunity to squeeze in somehow, make the voters of Greenland vote for the United States for annexation or for something like that. And people will do that because they get money or they get some sort of benefit. That is feasible, and the population is not so great to prevent something like that. Okinawa is a completely different ball of wax.
All right, and two more questions, or a question and a comment from last week, which was they were shared during the week, this past week. So the first one is Mr. Langley is too polite to mention that Trump's action against Venezuela was totally lawless and irresponsible. And frankly, I don't see what good it will do Japan to increase arms spending. We do not need to fight World War III over Taiwan. Okay, this is a comment which I agree with very much, this opinion. And then this opinion was shared by Donald Seekins. And then we've got another one from Jeffrey Taylor Jr. Well, he says, off the top of my head, it seems to me that if Japan makes an effort to repair relations with Russia and China, it would fix Japan's lack of energy and supply chain security.
Yep,
Which is also very
undoubtedly.
true. Yes,
Undoubtedly, yeah. Being
indeed.
friendly with China and Russia fixes a lot of problems. And people like to point out that this relationship between Japan and the United States is a bit weird. It is a bit unnatural. The more natural assimilation is with China and with Russia. I mean, they're contiguous, basically. But then you have the Pacific War and you have the rebuilding of Japan. So you've got a lot of historical underpinnings there. But yes, it's true. Gosh, a lot of issues, a lot of world issues would be solved if Japan was more aligned with China and with Russia. But I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think that, I think the political differences are so great. Japan has become a political capitalist democracy of sorts. And Russia and China are politically very different. So that's where the rub is. But you're absolutely right to point that out.
Very much so, yes. And okay, well, Peter Pan says, I'm crossing my fingers for Takaichi-san. Thank you very much for sharing that. And we've got Daniel Mags. Daniel, thank you very much
Hi,
for your
Daniel.
thank you for being with us too. Daniel writes, roughly what percentage of Japan's proposed increase in defense spending will go to US defense contractors, and how much will be spent domestically?
I don't know. Probably the lion's share, you would think. I mean, that's really why a lot of these decisions are being done. But also, if you're going to have a defense budget that is procuring defense equipment, you want to have the best, and the United States is producing a lot that is the best, and it's also incorporated into the defense umbrella that is provided by the United States. But the Israelis are making good things, and they purchase a lot of Israeli defense equipment as well. Also, throughout the world, there are competent IP and material sciences that the Japanese can incorporate. But I think this alliance, the United States is basically saying, you are under our protection and our umbrella. We're backing off a little bit, and you should spend more on that. But in order to achieve the same level, you should be purchasing from us to help our economy. And you can see that clearly with Donald Trump. We don't mind making decisions as long as it benefits the United States. So I don't have an analysis of how much of the defense spending is going to U.S. contractors, but I guess I could look into it if it's important to you.
Right, maybe we can look into it and share some numbers next time. And Daniel says, the rub is that any Japanese leader who tries to rebuild relations with China and Russia will be CIA'd. And I guess this is the destiny of Japan, at least for the foreseeable future, that it will have to really consider what the
So is
interest
that also from Daniel?
Yes, yes.
So what he's saying, let me make sure I understand it, that if somebody wants to pursue this idea of Japan being more affiliated with China or even Russia, then he says CIA, that means that the Central Intelligence
Will be,
Agency.
yes, undermined. The premiership will be undermined by Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And well, moving forward, okay, we've got a question from Peter Pan. The question: will Prime Minister Takaichi follow President Lee diplomacy, playing with China and the West to get the best of both sides?
We all do. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That is politics. That's diplomacy. And
Well,
go ahead.
no, I wanted to say that my concern nowadays is that in the past we had Nikai Sensei, right? And he was a big proponent of stable relations with China. Now he has retired, and there are fewer people in the diet like him who do support the idea of having stable relations with the Chinese industry and politically as well. And Miss Takaichi at the moment, she is definitely not a
Mm-hmm.
member of that wing, right? And my concern is that, yes, Japan is very adept, let's say, at diplomatic movements and trying to get the best of both sides. But I'm not sure that Prime Minister Takaichi is actually going to do that. I very much hope that she will, right? I do hope that she will. But we don't know that at the moment. So, what are your thoughts on this, Timothy?
Well, it's not a static; it's a dynamic. The
Mhm.
Chinese country is different than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the United States and many countries decided let's let the Chinese people come up the economic level. Let's let them do manufacturing there. Let's purchase product from them so that the Chinese people, when they get the taste of capitalism, they'll become more like us. And that's not quite what happened. So China is not like it was 20 years ago. It's got lots of money. It's doing a lot of manufacturing for the entire world. It's collecting money from everywhere. So the supply chains all kind of spring from China. And what China has done with that money is they've improved the standard of living of the Chinese people. They've developed cities, developed their infrastructure, but they've also earmarked a big portion, like maybe 5% of their GDP to militarization, to military armaments and that sort of thing. And that is a huge force to contend with. And in the past, China has not been very aggressive to take over land, to go into Mongolia, to claim property that wasn't part of China proper. It was very polite and predictable on how it played geopolitics. But that has changed dramatically, and the idea of merging once again with Taiwan, that temperature has risen dramatically, and it's bolstered by armaments and jets and bombers and you know breaching what we have um, come to expect as political boundaries. Those are being breached on a regular basis. So it is, China is different than it was 20 years ago. It would have been nice and cool and acceptable for somebody like Nikai to develop a relationship with that country. And I think the dynamics have changed considerably as a consequence.
Right. And I still wonder, though, how much of these are projections of our own
Yeah.
expectations. Because we in the West believe that when there is a problem, we have to fight for, right, to resolve it. And that's not in general, of course, that's not the Asian way.
Yeah.
And China is always thinking about the long-term gains, and a short-term military conflict is probably not what they are having in mind. And although those drills and everything, I wonder how much of that is just posturing and trying to tell the West, leave us alone,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because certainly there is something there too. I know that this opinion of mine is unpopular with many of the Westerners I know, and people watching and so on. But I do think that there is something there, and we do have to be careful and consider let's say, history and long-term projections and everything. So,
well, the other thing too that's inescapable, Maya, is that we are smeared in propaganda. Decisions that we make and things that we believe to be real, we only believe that because we've been kind of indoctrinated to believe that. And a lot of the things that we think are real or the reason or that's right or the foundations, they've been created for us to absorb and to believe. And in many instances, it's not accurate. It's not a reflection of reality. And we deal with that every single day. We just don't know it. So it's really important to keep your head, level and to absorb, information from different sources. This idea of Japan going military, there's enough to be said for it to remain pacifist too. There are other countries that have done that successfully. The fact that Japan is in a very difficult geopolitical crucible and plays a central role, potentially plays a central role, is maybe a defining factor. But these decisions, these big decisions, and the way that we perceive them and evaluate them, that's being dictated, largely by the mass media and governments and government movements. So it's I think people understand that propaganda and this the storylines and the narratives are being fed to us, but I think people are becoming much more sensitive to it and evaluating it a little bit more carefully. This idea, wouldn't Japan be in a better position to be more aligned to China and Russia? I think that's a great discussion to have. But we've been told that can't happen. It's not going to happen. That the devil would come out of the ground if that kind of force was realized. The United States would be left out in the woods, and the United States needs to be the global policeman. It needs to dictate how things are done, and the oil price is being measured in U.S. dollars and things like that. So, yeah, there's a lot going on that that we really don't have much of a handle in, but we take it for granted.
well, thank you for this. Well, I think that we have gone through most of the comments. There is one more from Peter Pan here saying, self-interest prevail over Western values, democracy and liberty in international. Well, he says, this is a question, forgive me for misreading it. Will self-interest prevail over Western values of democracy and liberty in international diplomacy?
Sometimes. There comes a point where um, your accommodation just doesn't suit your better interests. So yes, sometimes you decide you're gonna suffer in order to benefit in the long term, or you're going to accommodate some position rather than the one that you feel more closely to. We were talking about, Prime Minister Ishiba saying, "I'm not going to have a snap election when I become prime minister," and then having a snap election. So
Right.
it's the same sort of thing. He didn't think that it would support his position as prime minister. It wouldn't benefit him, but somehow he was told, suffer this tiny indiscretion and go ahead and have the snap election because you'll benefit from it in the near future. The prime minister is going through the same thing. Snap election, no snap election. She decided she wasn't going to have the snap election, and then she decided to have the snap election. So yes, self-interest, and also, maybe biting the bullet, suffering a little bit now for a larger, bigger payout and benefit in the near term. Yeah, that's juggling balls and kind of living life, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you for this, and to everybody who stayed with us and shared their thoughts, questions as well. We are very grateful for you being here on Sunday morning or later during the week, even. So, if you haven't watched this briefing live during the live stream, you can always do watch the replays during the week and leave your thoughts and questions there. Also, please help us spread the word, like, comment, share this with friends
Please
and
like.
colleagues. Yes, and
Yeah.
colleagues who might benefit from the information here and the discussions as well. And we'll be here once again at 8:20 next Sunday with Timothy Langley, who will probably once again report from his beautiful boat in Katsuyama. I want to say once again to everybody who is here, please put, well, on your calendar, save the day of February 11th when we're going to have a special discussion with Mr. Glenn Fukushima, and he is a visiting fellow at the Stanford University. We're going to talk about the economy and, well, the developments here in this region and what Japan can do actually to well, to deal with well the crisis it is in, the demographic crisis, the shortage of labor, the the shortage we say of research and development and everything else. So that is February 11th at 8 o'clock in the morning. And Timothy, well, once again, just I wanted to remind everybody we are
In 3 days.
in 3 days. Yes, that is the movie night on Tuesday in Tokyo at 6 o'clock at that's the Lubina restaurant. We'll have a brief dinner and meet everybody who wants to join there. And from there, 7:25, we are going to watch the Avatar movie, the third one of the series. So thank you, Timothy, very much for your
And
devotion, dedication. Yes.
just to make sure that everybody, this is a trial. It's a trial balloon. We're going to have a snap election. It's a trial balloon to see if we can get together socially from time to time, maybe in conjunction with a movie and a dinner. Do it once a month. So if there's a lot of interest in it, we'll continue to do it. But it's just let's try it, and it would be great to meet people and to put a face with many of the faces, a face with many of the comments and the the people that we deal with on a weekly basis. 5 years coming up.
Indeed, yes, 5 years. Great. Okay, so thank you very much again. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the next week. May it be successful, very productive for all of you watching. And we are looking forward to seeing you again next Sunday.
Thank you, Maya.